virgin village nurse risked her life to save an injured man, unaware he was a billionaire prince. Flames licked at the twisted hood of the black luxury car as the man inside coughed blood against the steering wheel. Smoke curled through the shattered glass, and his deep, broken voice rasped into the night. "Help! Somebody! Help me!" From the edge of the dirt road, Nia Johnson dropped her satchel and ran. She didn't think. She couldn't. The only thing she heard was the shriek of metal, the hiss of fire, and the pounding of her own heartbeat. Her bare hands clawed at the jammed door until her skin split, but it wouldn't move. Desperate, she grabbed a fallen branch, smashed the window, and reached inside. The man's body was heavy, his blood soaking her uniform as she dragged him free. Behind them, the car exploded, the heat throwing sparks into her hair. He groaned once, eyelids fluttering open. His eyes, dark, commanding, foreign, locked on hers for a moment that seared her to the bone. "No hospital," he croaked, clutching her wrist with surprising strength. "Hide me. Promise." Nia blinked. "Are you insane? You'll die if I don't." But his head lolled back, unconscious. Smoke burned her lungs. Sirens howled faintly in the distance. If she left him here, strangers might finish what the wreck had started. Something in her gut whispered that this man wasn't just any stranger. She had no time to question it. Nia ran to the tool shed near the clinic, grabbed 2 long planks of wood, and lashed them together with rope, weaving her grandmother's torn bedsheet between them. The makeshift stretcher groaned under his weight, but she heaved until her arms screamed. "Lord, give me strength," she muttered, planting her heels into the dirt. Inch by inch, she dragged the man down the rutted road, sweat blinding her eyes. Dust choked her throat, but she refused to stop. Each time the stretcher jolted over a rock, his chest rattled with a ragged breath, reminding her that his life hung by a thread. Halfway to the village clinic, his hand twitched, fingers curling around the sheet as though fighting unseen enemies. Words slipped from his lips in a language Nia didn't recognize. Royal, commanding, fearful, all at once. She shivered. "Who are you?" she whispered, pulling harder. No answer, only the sound of crickets, the scrape of wood over gravel, and the faint roar of another vehicle somewhere in the night. Finally, the faint glow of the clinic lantern appeared. Relief rushed through her, but it was short-lived. A sleek black SUV slowed on the highway, its tinted windows rolling down just enough for her to feel the weight of unseen eyes. Nia froze, heart hammering. The man on the stretcher groaned again, gripping her wrist with bruising strength. His lips brushed her ear as he whispered, barely audible, "Don't trust them." And then he went limp. Nia's breath hitched. Whoever this man was, she had just dragged him out of fire and into a storm far greater than she could imagine. And with headlights turning down the dirt road, bearing straight toward her, she realized she might already be too late. Nia's arms still burned from dragging the mysterious man all the way to her grandmother's small clapboard house, but she refused to collapse. With Grandma Mabel's help, she wrestled him onto the narrow bed in her room. His blood seeped into the quilt, and his breaths came ragged, shallow. The dim glow of the oil lamp revealed the details she hadn't fully seen in the chaos. A face both beautiful and intimidating, sculpted cheekbones, lips pressed in a grim line even in unconsciousness. His shirt, torn at the shoulder, revealed the hard planes of a chest not used to labor, but to privilege. Grandma Mabel shook her head, pressing a damp cloth into Nia's hand. "Child, you've dragged a storm into this house. Strange men bring strange trouble. He would have died out there," Nia whispered, wiping soot from his face. "I couldn't leave him." Her grandmother's eyes softened, but her tone remained firm. "Then you better pray you know what you're doing." For the next hour, Nia cleaned wounds, stitched a gash on his arm with trembling hands, and cooled his fever. The stranger groaned, eyelids fluttering, but never fully woke, until, at last, a deep voice rasped from the bed. "Where am I?" Nia jumped, nearly dropping her needle. His eyes were open now, sharp and assessing despite his weakness. The weight of his stare pinned her in place. "You're safe," she said quickly. "In my home." "I'm a nurse. You had an accident." He pushed himself up on one elbow, ignoring the pain that twisted his features. "Take me to a hotel." "I'll pay you." Her brows shot up. "You can't even stand, and you think I'm carrying you back out? You're not going anywhere until I'm sure you won't die on me." Something flickered in his eyes, annoyance, but also surprise. He wasn't used to being refused. "You don't know who I am," he said slowly, almost as a threat. "Should I?" Nia shot back, tying off her stitch. "All I know is you're bleeding in my bed, and you'll follow my rules if you want to live." For the first time, the corner of his mouth twitched as though he might laugh. Instead, he leaned back, gaze roaming over her small room, the peeling wallpaper, the shelf lined with medical textbooks, the vision board of her dream clinic pinned above the desk. His eyes lingered there. "You want more than this life," he said, voice low. "A clinic of your own, a big dream for a village nurse." Heat rushed to her cheeks. "How do you—" "You write in your journal," he interrupted smoothly. "And you left it open." Her heart stuttered. He'd read her private words. She snatched the notebook off the table, glaring at him. "You had no right—" The front door banged open before she could finish. "Nia? You here?" The bright voice belonged to Kayla Brooks, her childhood friend and fellow nurse, who strolled in without knocking. Her eyes landed instantly on the stranger propped against Nia's pillows. "Well, well. What do we have here?" Nia stiffened. "Kayla, this isn't—" But Kayla was already leaning against the doorway, eyes sparkling with mischief. "He's fine enough to be lying in your bed, girl." Don't tell me the saintly Nia Johnson finally brought a man home. Nia flushed crimson. "It's not like that. He was in an accident." Kayla ignored her, addressing the man directly. "And who might you be, handsome?" The stranger's lips curved, his arrogance returning like a cloak. "Just a businessman passing through." Nothing more. Kayla's laughter was soft and teasing. "Businessman, huh? With a car like that, you must be doing very well for yourself." She stepped closer, brushing invisible dust off his sleeve. Nia felt something hot twist in her stomach. She hated how much it bothered her, hated the way Kayla's playful flirtation seemed to please him. "Enough," she said firmly. "He needs rest." "You should go." Kayla, her friend, arched a brow, smirking. "Fine. But don't keep all the fun to yourself." With a wink, she finally slipped out. The room fell quiet again. Nia avoided his eyes as she gathered bloody rags, but his voice followed her, rich and unsettling. "You defend me like I belong to you," he murmured. "Do you?" Nia spun, words caught in her throat, but before she could answer, his gaze softened, just for a breath, before he closed his eyes again, shutting her out completely. She pressed her palm to her racing heart, realizing with a chill that her life had already changed the moment she pulled him from that fire, and whatever secrets he carried, they were about to drag her deeper than she ever imagined. By morning, the secret was already slipping through the cracks. Nia hadn't even finished scrubbing Malik's blood from the bedsheets before whispers began curling through the village like smoke. "Did you see Nia dragging that man on a stretcher through the pines? They say he ain't from here. Did you see that watch on his wrist? Her grandma's gone soft, letting her keep a stranger under her roof." Ain't Decent Nia kept her head down on her way to the clinic, but she could feel eyes following her. Mothers hushed their children when she passed, and the deacons' wives exchanged knowing looks. By the time she returned home, Chief Otis Jackson himself was waiting on the porch, arms crossed over his broad chest. "Young lady," he rumbled, "folks are talking. They say you've brought a strange man into your house, without the good sense to tell anyone who he is." Nia bristled. "He's my patient, Chief." "He was bleeding to death. What should I have done? Left him in the road?" Otis's eyes softened for a heartbeat, but his voice stayed hard. "You're a good girl, Nia. Everyone knows that, but good girls can lose their reputation faster than a summer storm washes out a dirt road. You need to be careful." Behind the door, Nia could hear the stranger shifting on her bed. She tightened her grip on her satchel. "Careful or not, I won't let a man die just to keep people's tongues still." Otis sighed, shaking his head. "Just don't let him bring you trouble, child." He tipped his hat and walked away, leaving her with a hollow feeling in her chest. Inside, Malik sat half upright, the bandages on his arm stark against his brown skin. His expression was unreadable, but she knew he'd heard every word. "You risk a lot for someone you don't know," he said quietly. Nia turned on him, frustration spilling out. "And you risk my whole life by showing up in the middle of the night bleeding and demanding secrets. Who are you, really?" But Malik only leaned back against the pillows, his eyes unreadable. "Someone who doesn't belong here. That's all you need to know." Far away in the royal city, the truth of his absence was stirring chaos. In the marble halls of the Oba Palace, Queen Mother Imani paced, her golden robes trailing behind her. 3 days. 3 days my son has been missing, and you tell me nothing?" She snapped at the guards. Her voice, sharp as glass, echoed off the carved ceilings. From the shadows, Prince Jabari Williams, Malik's younger brother, stepped forward, lips curved in a mask of concern. "Mother, I'll find him. I've already sent men searching the highways. Malik's recklessness embarrasses us all. Perhaps he doesn't want to be found." Imani's eyes narrowed, but she allowed his words to hang. Jabari bowed, hiding the glint of triumph in his gaze. That same evening, across the city, Selena Dubois sipped champagne at a rooftop lounge. Her phone buzzed with a message from one of her gossip blog contacts. "Rumor is the prince hasn't been seen in days." Selena smiled slowly, painted lips curving like a blade. "Oh, Malik," she purred, tapping a manicured nail against her glass. "If you won't stay in the spotlight, I'll drag you back into it myself." With one swift post, she leaked the rumor to the press. Prince Malik missing after mysterious accident. Back in the village, Nia tended Malik's fever through the night, listening as the crickets sang outside. He shifted restlessly, sometimes muttering in that strange language again, other times gripping her hand, as if he were drowning in memories she couldn't see. When she tried to ask him where he came from, he only whispered, "If they find me here, you'll be in danger too." Nia's pulse stilled. "Who's they?" But he turned his face away, eyes closing, leaving her staring at the stranger in her bed, torn between fear and the impossible pull of something she couldn't yet name. In the city, headlines scream, "Prince Malik missing." In the village, Nia watches him sweat through another fever dream, realizing with a chill that if the rumors are true, the man in her bed is far more dangerous and important than she ever imagined. By dawn, Malik was already trying to rise from Nia's bed. His movements were slow but deliberate, like a soldier refusing to yield. "I can't stay here," he muttered, swinging his legs to the floor. Nia rushed forward, pressing a hand to his chest. "Are you out of your mind?" You can barely breathe without wincing. His jaw tightened. "This place, it's too exposed. I need to leave before—" He swayed suddenly, knees buckling. Nia caught him under the arms just in time, her small frame straining against his weight. They stumbled back onto the bed together, breathless. "Stubborn fool!" she snapped, grabbing a damp cloth to cool his fevered skin. "You'll kill yourself before anyone else does." For a moment his fierce eyes met hers, something vulnerable flickering there. Then he looked away, allowing her to tend him in silence. That afternoon, Nia led him carefully to the village clinic. Malik leaned on her arm, shoulders rigid with pride, but his gaze shifted as he stepped inside. The cracked linoleum floors, rusted beds, and shelves bare of medicine spoke louder than words. "This is what we have," Nia said, pulling bandages from a nearly empty drawer. "People come here sick, bleeding, praying I can help them, and all I have are scraps." Malik's expression hardened, but not at her. He touched the edge of a broken chair, then looked back at her with an intensity that startled her. "You shouldn't have to fight like this." She gave a short, bitter laugh. "In my world, everyone fights like this." Later, when she left him to rest in the clinic's small office, Malik pulled a phone from his pocket, a sleek device he'd hidden under his jacket. His thumb hovered over the encrypted line to his security team. With one call, he could bring helicopters, doctors, guards. But his gaze lingered on Nia's vision board pinned above the desk, covered in sketches of a future clinic she could only dream of. He slipped the phone back into his pocket without pressing send. That evening, a cluster of children from the village spotted Malik limping along the path outside. Their eyes went wide at the sight of his expensive shoes and regal bearing. "Mister, can you play ball with us?" one boy asked shyly, holding out a battered football. Malik raised a brow. "I don't—" But before he could finish, another child tugged his sleeve, and somehow he found himself awkwardly tossing the ball. The children erupted in laughter when he fumbled the catch, and to his own surprise, a laugh broke from his chest too. Rough, unpolished, but real. Nia stood at the clinic doorway, watching him with arms folded. The prince, who carried himself like steel, looked almost human surrounded by children. When the game ended, Malik returned the ball, his lips still curved faintly. He caught Nia's gaze and walked toward her, his limp more pronounced now. "You saved me," he said quietly, "not just from the fire." From myself, Nia blinked, thrown by the sincerity in his tone. She opened her mouth to respond, but headlights suddenly swept across the road. A sleek SUV slowed in front of the clinic, tinted windows lowering just enough for her to see the glint of a camera lens. Malik's expression shifted instantly, the softness gone, replaced by a cold edge. He gripped Nia's arm, pulling her back inside as the car idled outside. "They found me," he whispered, eyes hard as stone. Nia's breath caught. She realized with a chill that whatever he'd been running from had finally reached her doorstep, and she was no longer just a nurse protecting a patient. She was in the middle of something far bigger than her village could contain. The black SUV lingered outside the clinic all night, its engine humming like a predator in the dark. By sunrise, it was no longer alone. 3 more vehicles rolled into the village, glossy and armored, their tinted windows swallowing the morning light. Nia froze by the clinic door as men in dark suits spilled out, earpieces glinting. Their movements were precise, military. At their center stood a tall man with a badge clipped to his belt. "Target located," he said into a mic. His eyes landed on Malik, who had risen shakily from the cot. "Your Highness." The words cut through the air like a blade. Nia blinked, certain she'd misheard, but the men dropped into bows, and the one in front stepped forward. "Prince Malik Oba Williams, your family has been searching for you day and night. We must escort you home immediately, Prince." The words slammed into her chest. She turned to Malik, her voice trembling. "What did he just call you?" Malik's jaw tightened. He glanced at her, regret flickering across his face, then away. "It wasn't safe to tell you." "You lied to me," she whispered. Heat rushed to her cheeks. "All this time, you let me think you were just some lost businessman, when really—" Her voice broke. "You're a prince." Outside, the village stirred like a kicked anthill. Neighbors spilled into the dirt road, craning their necks. Mothers pulled children close. Someone whispered, "Prince." Did she say prince? Then came the click of cameras. News vans had followed the convoy, reporters shoving microphones forward. Flashes erupted, blinding in the morning haze. "Nia, step back!" one guard barked, moving to shield Malik. But she couldn't move. She felt every eye on her, every whisper burrowing under her skin. The quiet nurse from the pines, harboring royalty in her bed, shame and anger warred in her chest. Malik limped toward her, ignoring the guard's protests. His hand closed gently around hers. "I never meant for you to be dragged into this. You saved me, Nia, and I'll repay you, whatever you want. Your clinic, your future. I'll make it happen." Her throat tightened. "I don't want your money. I wanted honesty." His eyes softened, but the guards pressed closer. "Your Highness, time is critical. We must leave now." Malik's grip tightened on her hand, as though he wanted to resist. For a moment, his gaze held hers, with a promise she didn't understand. Then, with a pained breath, he released her. The convoy swallowed him, doors slamming shut. Engines roared. Within minutes, the motorcade disappeared down the dusty road, leaving only churned gravel and silence. The villagers turned on Nia, voices rising in a storm. She hid a prince under her roof? Who does she think she is? Did she think she could catch him like some trap? Nia's face burned. She stumbled back inside the clinic, shutting the door against their voices. Her hands pressed to her chest, trying to hold together the pieces of her heart. The bed was empty now, the sheets still stained with his blood. All that remained was the echo of his words. "I'll repay you." But the echo gave no comfort, because what she wanted wasn't repayment, it was the truth. And the truth had been taken from her the moment those black cars carried him away. Yet deep inside, she knew this wasn't the end. Princes didn't simply vanish from a village nurse's life. They dragged everything into their orbit. Love, danger, and storms far beyond her control. And for better or worse, Nia had already stepped into the storm. The convoy sped away from the village until red dirt roads gave way to smooth black highways, and finally the towering gates of the Ober estate. The palace rose like a monument to power, its marble spires gleaming in the late sun. To Nia, it was a world far beyond reach. To Malik, it was a gilded cage. The moment the car doors opened, Queen Mother Imani swept forward, robes of gold and crimson flowing, jewels heavy at her throat. Her face was carved from stone, her eyes sharp as the blade of a knife. "Malik Ober Williams!" she thundered, her voice carrying through the grand hall. "Do you know the shame you've brought on this family?" Disappearing for days, leaving the kingdom to wonder if their future king lay dead in a ditch. Malik bowed his head, but his jaw was tight. "Mother, I was attacked. I barely survived. Imani's nostrils flared. And yet you survived in a village, hidden among peasants? Do you realize what the press is saying? What enemies are whispering?" He met her glare with steel in his eyes. "Those villagers saved me. A nurse saved me." Imani's lips thinned, the very mention of Nia's existence sparking disdain. "You will not bring shame upon our name by entertaining nonsense with some village girl." Behind her, Prince Jabari stood silent, his hands clasped in feigned humility. But as Malik passed, Jabari's gaze followed him with quiet calculation. Later that evening, in the shadowed chambers of the East Wing, Jabari poured himself a glass of brandy while a tall, elegant woman leaned against the balcony rail. Selina Dubois, sharp-eyed, radiant, and dangerous as fire. "So the prodigal prince returns," she purred, swirling her wine. "The world thought him dead, but instead he was hiding in a shack with a nobody nurse." Jabari smirked. "That nurse could be our greatest gift. Malik has already drawn scandal by disappearing. Imagine what the world will say when they learn he shared a bed with a village woman." Selina's smile was slow, predatory. "And imagine what I could do with her face on the front page." The next morning, Malik sat at his desk, the palace walls pressing in on him, documents piled high, advisors waiting outside, but his mind was far from the politics of state. He saw instead the dirt-streaked face of a young woman dragging him from fire, the steady hands that stitched his wounds, the eyes that blazed when she called him a liar. He had never met a woman like Naya. A servant entered, bowing. "Your Highness, the gala tonight. Lady Selina Dubois has already confirmed her attendance." Malik's mouth set in a grim line. "Of course she has." That night, the chandeliers of the Oba ballroom glittered like 1,000 suns. Nobles, tycoons, and foreign dignitaries waltzed across polished marble. When Malik entered, the room hushed, whispers chasing him like shadows. Selina appeared from the crowd in a gown of scarlet silk, her beauty undeniable, her movements deliberate. She swept toward him, and without hesitation, draped herself over his arm. "My prince," she cooed, pressing her cheek against his shoulder, as if she still had the right. "The world missed you." "And so did I." Flashbulbs went off, reporters snapping pictures. Malik didn't push her away, but his gaze drifted elsewhere, to the memory of a village girl who wanted nothing from him but honesty. Across the ballroom, a journalist's phone pinged. He pulled it out, eyes widening. "Breaking news," he whispered to a colleague. "Photos leaked of the prince's time in the village." Within minutes, the screens in the room lit up. There she was, Naya Johnson, her braid messy, uniform bloodstained, dragging Malik on a makeshift stretcher down a dirt road. Headline after headline scrolled across the feeds. "Mystery woman who saved the prince, village nurse or secret lover." Malik's heart stuttered. Selina's grip on his arm tightened as she hissed, "Oh, Malik, looks like your little secret isn't so secret anymore." And around them, the room buzzed with fresh scandal, every camera now hungry for the name of the girl who dared touch a prince. The village hadn't stopped buzzing since the motorcade left. Every porch, every market stall, carried the same whispers. "Did you hear?" Nia was hiding him. She had the prince under her roof. Maybe she bewitched him. By the third day, the murmurs grew into something heavier, half awe, half suspicion. Some neighbors watched her with pride, others with narrowed eyes. It was just after dawn when the rumble of engines returned. This time it wasn't just a few black SUVs, it was a full royal convoy. Gleaming cars rolled down the dirt road, their presence shaking chickens from the yard and sending children racing after them. Villagers gathered in clusters, their Sunday best thrown on in haste, watching as uniformed palace guards stepped onto Nia's front porch. The tallest one unrolled a scroll, his voice booming across the crowd. "By decree of Queen Mother Imani Oba Williams, Nurse Nia Johnson is hereby summoned to the royal palace in the capital city. She will answer questions regarding her association with His Highness, Prince Malik Oba Williams." Gasps rippled through the village. Some women clapped their hands in pride. "Our little Nia, summoned to the palace," while others muttered darkly about impropriety. Chief Otis pushed forward, his face a mask of concern. "Child, this is dangerous business. Royals don't summon village girls unless it's to make examples of them. Before Nia could reply, Grandma Mabel's cane struck the porch. Enough! My granddaughter saved that boy's life. If the Queen Mother wants her, then let her go, with her head held high. Her grandmother's eyes found Nia's, full of both warning and pride. You were chosen by God that night, Nia. Don't you be afraid of no palace. Nia swallowed hard, heart hammering. Fear curled tight in her stomach, but beneath it flickered something else, determination. She nodded. I'll go. The journey to the city was a blur of flashing cameras and curious stares. Reporters pressed against the convoy, shouting questions as guards kept them at bay. Every time her name was yelled, Nia sank deeper into her seat, wishing she could vanish. But when the skyline rose ahead, glass towers glinting, the palace domes gleaming white and gold, she couldn't help the gasp that escaped her lips. She had never seen such grandeur. The palace gates opened, revealing courtyards lined with fountains that sparkled like diamonds. Servants bowed as the guards escorted her through marble corridors where chandeliers hung heavy with crystal. Nia felt her breath shorten. Her village dress, neat but plain, looked like a rag in such splendor. They led her into a vast reception hall. At its center stood Malik. He wore a tailored suit, posture regal, his presence filling the room. But the moment his eyes found her, the mask cracked. What are you doing here? His voice was sharp, but his gaze betrayed something deeper. Relief, disbelief, even fear. The Queen Mother summoned me, Nia said, struggling to keep her voice steady. Malik dismissed the guards with a wave, then strode forward, his steps brisk despite the limp. His hand caught her elbow, pulling her into a corner of the room. You shouldn't have come, he hissed. It isn't safe. Her chin lifted. I didn't have a choice. They made it clear this wasn't a request. He cursed under his breath, in a language she didn't understand, then ran a hand through his hair. I never wanted you dragged into this world. Nia stared at him, her chest tight. Maybe you should have thought about that before you lied to me. The words hung between them, sharper than any blade. For a heartbeat, Malik's proud shoulders sagged. Before he could reply, the doors at the far end of the hall creaked open. A ripple of silence fell as Queen Mother Imani entered, flanked by courtiers in shimmering gowns and jeweled turbans. Her eyes swept the room, landing first on Malik, then on Nia. The Queen Mother's smile was thin, dangerous. So, she said, her voice carrying like a judgment, this is the village girl who dragged my son from the dirt and into disgrace. Nia's stomach knotted, but she stood tall, refusing to look away. Behind her, Malik's hand tightened at her elbow, as though anchoring her. His glare never left his mother's face, and just like that, the palace had become a battlefield, one where Nia stood exposed under every eye. The Queen Mother's words echoed through the marble chamber, and Nia realized with a chill that she wasn't simply summoned as a witness. She was on trial, and the judgment of a kingdom now hung over her head. The palace dining hall gleamed with chandeliers so heavy they seemed ready to crush the mortals beneath them. Long tables stretched the length of the room, groaning under platters of roasted pheasant, candied fruits, and crystal goblets brimming with wine. Courtiers glittered in silks and jewels, their eyes sharper than the silver knives they toyed with. At the far end, Queen Mother Imani sat like a monarch carved from obsidian, every jewel in her crown gleaming with silent warning. Malik took his place at her right hand, and at his left, by decree, not invitation, sat Nia Johnson, her hands clenched in her lap, her village dress ironed smooth but glaringly plain among gowns spun from imported lace. Every murmur in the hall seemed directed at her, every glance a blade. So this is her. The nurse from the dirt roads. She looks like she doesn't even know which fork to use. Nia's throat tightened. She forced her gaze down, tracing the embroidery on the tablecloth to steady her nerves. The doors swung open with theatrical force. Selina Dubois glided in, red silk clinging to her like fire, diamonds dripping from her ears. She walked straight to Malik and, without hesitation, leaned down to press a kiss against his cheek. "My darling prince," she purred, her voice carrying for the entire court to hear. "How I prayed for your safe return." Malik's jaw hardened, but he didn't push her away. Selina slid gracefully into the seat across from Nia, her smile sharp as glass. "And you must be the little nurse," Selina said sweetly. Her eyes raked over Nia's modest dress. "How quaint." Heat flushed Nia's face. She opened her mouth, but Queen Mother Imani's voice sliced through the room before she could answer. "Our son was fortunate you were nearby during his accident," Imani said smoothly, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Though I imagine it must have been overwhelming. A woman of such humble circumstances suddenly thrust into the company of royalty." A ripple of laughter rose among the courtiers. Nia's shoulders stiffened. "Saving a life isn't overwhelming," she said quietly, forcing her voice not to shake. "It's my duty as a nurse." A hush fell. Selina let out a tinkling laugh. "Oh, how noble! Tell me, dear, did you practice your nursing in that little shack you call a clinic, or perhaps in the chicken coops of your village?" The courtiers erupted in cruel chuckles. One noblewoman covered her mouth, pretending to hide her laughter. Nia's chest burned. She gripped her fork, willing herself not to cry. Not here, not in front of them. But before she could speak, Malik's chair scraped back. The sound rang through the hall like thunder. He rose to his feet, eyes blazing. "Enough!" His voice cracked like a whip, silencing the room. He turned his glare on Selina, then swept it across the courtiers. "This woman saved my life. She dragged me from fire when death already had its hands on me. Not one of you in this room could claim the same. So show her the respect she is due, or you answer to me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Nobles exchanged shocked glances, whispers hissing like snakes. Selina's painted smile faltered, the diamond edges of her confidence dulling under Malik's fury. Nia stared up at him, stunned. For the first time, he had defended her not in private whispers, but before the entire court. When he sat again, his hand brushed hers under the table, not by accident. She jerked slightly at the warmth, at the way his touch steadied her storm. But across the hall, her eyes caught on another figure. Prince Jabari sat in silence, his goblet poised halfway to his lips. He hadn't laughed, hadn't spoken. He simply stared at her, unblinking, a shadow of something darker flickering in his gaze. A promise, a threat. Later, as the dinner dissolved into idle chatter and dancing, Malik pulled Nia aside into a marble alcove. His face was taut with anger still, but his voice softened when he looked at her. "You don't belong among their laughter," he said. Nia's chin lifted, the sting of humiliation still raw. "You think I don't know that?" His eyes burned into hers. "That's not what I meant. I meant you belong with me. In this world, you are strong enough to face fire for me. You're strong enough to face them." Her breath caught. His words were a balm and a brand all at once. Part of her wanted to believe him, to lean into the warmth of his gaze, but another part recoiled, bristling at the arrogance threaded into his promise. "You don't get to decide where I belong," she whispered, her voice sharp, despite the tremor in her chest. For the first time, Malik's certainty faltered. He opened his mouth, then shut it again, his jaw clenched, as if swallowing words he couldn't afford to speak. Behind them, The strains of music drifted through the palace halls, but Nia felt none of its lightness. She felt only the weight of 1,000 eyes, a kingdom's judgment, and the cold shadow of Jabari's stare still burning into her back. As Nia turned away from Malik, gathering her composure, she didn't notice Jabari rise from his seat across the hall. His smile was small, dangerous, and full of secrets. For the first time, Nia understood. Her survival in this palace wasn't just about dignity. It might one day be about her life. The palace gardens were quieter than the grand halls, a sanctuary of moonlit fountains and whispering leaves. Marble statues stood watch over manicured hedges, their stone faces cold and eternal. It was here that Malik led Nia, away from the whispers of the courtiers and the smirk of his brother. For the first time since stepping into the palace, she breathed without feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes. Still, her hands twisted nervously at her skirt as she walked beside him. "They'll never accept me," she murmured, her voice almost lost to the night. Malik stopped beside a fountain, the water catching silver light. "They don't have to," he said. His gaze caught hers, intense and unyielding. "I do." Nia swallowed hard, looking down at the ripples in the water. "You don't understand, Malik. My life isn't ballrooms and diamond crowns. It's blood on my hands, babies delivered on dirt floors, patients begging for medicine I don't have. My dream isn't to sit at your table. My dream is a clinic in my village, real supplies, real care. A place where people don't have to die waiting for miracles." Her words spilled out like a confession she hadn't meant to make. When she looked up, expecting mockery, she saw something else in his face, admiration, and something softer she couldn't name. "You've seen more of the world's pain than most of the people who sit on my council," Malik said quietly. "You want to heal. That is worth more than any crown." Her chest tightened. For a moment, the distance between them seemed to disappear, but elsewhere in the palace, shadows were gathering. In a quiet chamber, Jabari poured 2 glasses of wine as Kayla Brooks entered nervously. She had come under the pretense of visiting Nia, but the summons had been clear. The prince himself wanted to see her. "You're her friend, aren't you?" Jabari asked smoothly, handing her a glass. His smile was charming, his voice like silk. "You've known her longer than anyone." Kayla hesitated. "Yes, since we were children." Jabari leaned closer. "Then you know she doesn't belong here. My brother's obsession with her threatens everything. The family, the throne. You could help her, you know. Help her realize her place before she's destroyed by this world." Kayla's brows furrowed. "And why would I do that?" Jabari slid a velvet pouch across the table. The clink of gold coins inside was unmistakable. "Because loyalty should be rewarded. Think of your own future, Miss Brooks. Do you want to remain a nurse in a crumbling clinic, or would you prefer a life of wealth and influence?" Kayla's fingers trembled as they brushed the pouch. For a moment, guilt flickered in her eyes, then she closed her hand around it. Back in the gardens, Malik had drawn closer to Nia, his voice low and earnest. "You think you don't belong here. But when you speak, I see a strength none of them have. You don't fear me, you don't bow, you stand. That's why I—" His words faltered as his hand lifted, brushing a stray braid from her cheek. Their eyes locked, and the air grew taut, charged. Slowly he leaned in, his breath warm against her lips. Nia's pulse thundered. Part of her wanted to pull back, to remind herself he was a prince, and she was nothing more than a village nurse. But another part, the part that remembered his laugh with the children, his gratitude in the clinic, ached to close the distance. Their lips nearly touched when a voice cut through the garden. "Malik!" Selena's heels clicked against the stone as she strode into the moonlight, her gown shimmering like fire. She stopped short, eyes narrowing at the sight of them so close. "What a charming scene," she drawled, venom sweet in her tone. "The prince and his little nurse, playing lovers among the roses." Nia jerked back, her face burning. Malik's jaw hardened, but Selina's triumphant smile was already spreading. She stepped closer, brushing her hand along Malik's sleeve. "You forget yourself, my prince. The world is watching. They expect you to stand beside women like me, not charity cases plucked from the mud." Malik's eyes flashed. "Careful, Selina." But Nia's heart had already dropped. The courtier's laughter, the Queen Mother's disdain, Selina's venom, all of it pressed down until she could hardly breathe. She turned away, whispering, "I don't belong here." Malik caught her wrist, his voice fierce. "Then I'll prove you do." Nia froze, staring at him, but his words, though powerful, carried a weight that unsettled her. Did he want her for who she was, or as another battle to win? As Malik watched Nia retreat into the shadows, he clenched his fists. If she doubted her place by his side, then he would test her. He would find out whether she loved him or the crown he carried, and the test he devised might just break both of their hearts. By the time Nia returned to her village, her name was no longer her own. It belonged to every mouth that spoke it, every newspaper that printed it, every gossip that twisted it. Children ran barefoot through the dusty streets chanting, "Nia and the prince! Nia and the prince!" Their laughter rang like bells, innocent and unknowing. But the adults' voices were heavier, sharpened by envy, suspicion, and fear. "She's forgotten who she is. First a nurse, now she thinks she'll be queen. Does she really believe a man like that will keep her?" Nia's stomach churned as she pushed open the clinic door. The familiar scent of antiseptic and old wood wrapped around her. But even here she could not escape the whispers. A mother, waiting with her sick child, looked at her with wide eyes. "Miss Nia," she whispered, voice trembling with awe, "is it true? You were in the palace? With him?" Nia forced a smile, crouching beside the child to check his fever. "Don't believe everything you hear," she murmured. But even as she said it, she knew her words were useless. The village had already woven its story, with her as the center. That evening, Chief Otis Jackson arrived at her door, his broad frame filling the porch. He carried his hat in his hands, his expression grave. "Child," he said, "I warned you once already. Now the whole world knows your name, and that boy's world is not yours. Royals don't reach down to lift us up. They reach down to use us." Nia's chest tightened. "I didn't ask for any of this, Chief. I didn't ask to save him, or to be dragged into his palace." Otis's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. "That's the danger of storms, Nia. You don't have to ask to be caught in them. Just be careful before your name brings shame instead of pride." When he left, she stood in the doorway, long after the sound of his boots faded. Shame, pride, words that weighed heavier than any wound she'd ever stitched. The next day, as the clinic bustled with coughing children and weary mothers, a shadow fell across the doorway. Nia looked up, her heart stopping. Malik. Gone was the suit, the polished veneer of the palace. He wore a simple shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, but nothing could hide his presence. Gasps rippled through the waiting room as every head turned. "Your Highness," someone whispered. Nia froze, hands trembling around the bandages she was wrapping. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice low, sharp. "I had to see," Malik said simply, his gaze sweeping the cramped room, the peeling paint, the shelves half empty of medicine. "I had to see the world you spoke of." Her jaw clenched. "And now you've brought chaos into it." But before she could send him away, a small boy tugged at his sleeve, eyes wide. "Sir, my sister can't breathe right." Malik knelt, the lines of his face softening as the boy pulled him to a corner where a girl wheezed on a cot. Nia rushed to her side, checking her lungs with practiced speed. "She needs medicine I don't have," she murmured, frustration burning in her chest. "If I had an inhaler, she'd be breathing easier in minutes." Instead, her voice broke. "Instead, I can only pray." Malik's eyes hardened. He rose to his full height, addressing her with the force of command. "No more praying for scraps. Tell me what you need. How much? I'll fund it all. This clinic, the medicine, everything." The room fell silent. Mothers clutched their children, eyes wide with hope. Nia stared at him, her pulse racing. "Do you hear yourself? You think money will fix everything. You think you can buy away the struggle, buy away my pride, buy me." Malik stepped closer, his voice low but fierce. "I don't want to buy you, Nia. I want to honor you. You saved me. Let me save you back." Her heart wavered, caught between longing and fear. His words struck something deep, but behind them she heard the echo of chains, the fear of owing him, of becoming another possession in his world of power. She shook her head. "You don't understand. If I accept, they'll say I only wanted your money. They'll say I chased you for it. My whole life will become their lie." Malik's eyes softened, the fury ebbing into something more vulnerable. "Then let them talk. They already do. All that matters is what we know to be true." The silence between them was thick, charged, broken only by the wheeze of the girl on the cot. Malik turned suddenly, striding toward the door. "Tomorrow," he said over his shoulder, "tomorrow supplies will arrive. No more children will suffer here." And then he was gone, leaving the clinic buzzing with awe, patients murmuring blessings under their breath. Nia stood frozen, her chest a battlefield of emotions. Gratitude, fear, desire, resentment. She wanted to believe his words, but she also feared drowning under their weight. As she pressed a cool cloth to the sick girl's forehead, the villagers' whispers began anew. "She's already changing. Look how he protects her. She'll forget us soon enough. Or maybe she'll bring us all fortune." Nia closed her eyes, the weight of every voice pressing down. That night, alone in her room, she whispered into the darkness, "If I take his help, I'll lose myself. If I refuse, I'll lose him." Outside her window, the hum of approaching cars cut through the quiet, and she knew Malik's promise had already set forces in motion she couldn't stop. The palace glowed like a jewel that night. Lanterns flickered in every window, and carriages lined the cobblestone drive. The Oba royal family had announced a celebration, the safe return of Prince Malik. Diplomats, business magnates, and nobles flooded into the ballroom, their laughter and champagne-fueled chatter echoing beneath vaulted ceilings painted with golden constellations. For Nia, standing in the shadows at the edge of the ballroom, it felt less like a celebration and more like a trial. Her gown was simple compared to the glittering creations around her. Silk the palace seamstresses had tailored at the last minute. Its pale blue meant to soften her, but the whispers did not soften. There she is, the nurse, dragged him from the dirt, and now thinks she belongs in marble halls. Look at her, clutching that skirt like a servant. Nia's hands tightened on the fabric. She told herself she could endure it, that she was here only because the Queen Mother had insisted, but her heart pounded too fast, and her eyes darted too often toward the double doors. Then the room shifted. Selina Dubois swept in. Gasps followed her like a tide. Her gown was a sheath of crimson satin, her hair twisted high, but it was not her beauty that stole the room. It was the jewels glittering at her throat. The Oba family diamonds. Every courtier knew them. A necklace worn only by women who bore the family's favor. Selena's smile as she entered was pure triumph, her eyes locked on Nia's, lingering there, daring her to crumble. Queen Mother Imani's lips curved ever so slightly as she rose to greet Selena, brushing her cheek in a kiss. "How radiant you look tonight, my dear." From the shadows, Prince Jabari leaned toward his mother, his voice low but poisonous. Malik grows reckless. The nurse clouds his judgment. Imagine what the people will say. Their prince disgraced by a peasant girl, while a true noblewoman stands ready. Imani's expression didn't shift, but her eyes flickered once toward Nia, sharp and assessing. Meanwhile, Malik entered to thunderous applause, his tailored suit cut to perfection, his crown light catching the chandeliers. He moved through the crowd with regal command, but his eyes searched until they found her, Nia. And just like that, the whispers faded for him. He crossed the ballroom floor, ignoring Selena's extended hand, ignoring the nobles who bowed as he passed. He stopped in front of Nia, who froze under the weight of every gaze. "Dance with me," Malik said simply. Gasps rippled. A servant nearly dropped a tray. Selena's smile shattered, and Queen Mother Imani's jeweled fingers tightened around her wine glass. Nia's throat went dry. "Malik, Dance," he repeated, his voice low, commanding but not unkind. His hand was already outstretched, steady and waiting. She placed her trembling fingers in his, and he led her to the center of the floor. The orchestra swelled, violins sweeping the air as Malik's arms slid around her waist. Every step felt impossible, but his gaze anchored her. For a moment the ballroom disappeared. There was only the warmth of his hand, the steadiness of his eyes, and the echo of her own racing heart. "You don't know what you've done," she whispered, fear tangled with awe. "I do," Malik murmured, his voice brushing her ear, "and I'd do it again." But not everyone in the room was enchanted. At the edge of the hall, Kayla Brooks stood near the reporters aloud inside, her gown a borrowed sparkle that couldn't hide the envy simmering beneath her smile. She had been summoned as Nia's friend, but her eyes never left Malik's hand on Nia's waist. Her phone buzzed. A message blinked on the screen. "We'll pay double if you send us something we can print tonight." Kayla hesitated, her pulse racing. Then, with trembling fingers, she opened her gallery. Photos of Nia's journal pages she had once glimpsed, scans of clinic bills, snippets of conversations, proof that the humble nurse had dreams of money, of power, of things she could never afford. She pressed send, and in minutes the ballroom's whispers turned sharp. Screens lit up with headlines. The village nurse's ambition, did she target the prince for wealth? Exclusive. Nia Johnson's secret plans for a royal-funded clinic. The murmurs grew louder, then crueler. She wants his crown. She's been planning this all along. Ambition disguised as innocence. Selena's laughter rose above the noise, sweet and cutting. "Oh, darling Nia. You've played your part well." Nia's blood ran cold. Her eyes darted around, every noble, every reporter staring, their gazes dripping with accusation. She yanked her hand from Malik's, stumbling back. "This isn't what it looks like," she tried to say, but her voice broke. Malik turned, fury igniting in his eyes as he saw the headlines. "Nia!" But humiliation crashed over her like a wave. She couldn't breathe under the weight of their stares, their whispers. She turned and ran, skirts swishing, tears burning hot down her cheeks. "Wait!" Malik's voice thundered after her. He shoved past nobles, ignoring his mother's sharp call, ignoring Selena's triumphant smirk. He followed her through the marble halls, her figure blurring as she fled past gilded mirrors and velvet drapes. "Nia!" His voice echoed through the corridors. "Don't believe them. Don't run from me." But she was already pushing through the palace doors, into the night. As Malik burst into the courtyard after her, the palace gates creaked open, and waiting beyond was a familiar figure in the shadows. Jabari, his smile cold and knowing, watching Nia flee. Malik froze as realization struck. His brother had planned this moment all along. The palace never truly slept. Even at midnight, its marble corridors hummed with the footsteps of guards, the flicker of lanterns, the echo of whispers too heavy for daylight. In a dim study on the West Wing, Detective Marcus Cole sifted through files spread across the desk. Photographs of twisted car wreckage, bank transfers in Jabari's name, records of hired men from the city's underworld. The pieces were falling into place, ugly and undeniable. Prince Malik's accident wasn't an accident, Marcus muttered under his breath. It was a hit. The door creaked. A guard stepped in, stiff and uneasy. "Sir, the younger prince is asking questions. He suspects you're investigating." Marcus's jaw tightened. He had known the risk of digging too close to the royal family's rot, but the evidence was clear. Prince Jabari had ordered the ambush that nearly killed his brother, and Jabari wasn't finished. Across the city, in a shadowed warehouse, Jabari met with two mercenaries, their faces scarred and hardened by too many jobs. "The first attempt failed," Jabari said, his voice smooth but venomous. "My brother lives, and worse, he flaunts his nurse as though she were already queen. That ends now. She is his weakness. Remove her, and Malik will crumble." The mercenaries nodded, the clink of cash-filled briefcases sealing their pact. Meanwhile, Malik stood in the palace gardens, his shoulders heavy as he waited. When Nia appeared, wrapped in a shawl against the chill night, his chest tightened. She looked at him as though she wanted to love him, but feared him just as much. "You wanted to see me?" she asked softly. "Yes." Malik's voice was low, rough. He stepped closer, shadows playing across his face. "Nia, there are things you don't understand about my world. That night you pulled me from the wreck. It wasn't fate. It was survival. I've been hunted before. I'll be hunted again." Nia's stomach turned cold. "Hunted? You mean—" "Assassins. Rivals, men who would rather see me dead than crowned." His gaze darkened, haunted. "The accident wasn't chance. Someone wanted me gone." Her hand flew to her mouth. "And I've been standing beside you this whole time." "Which means you're in danger too," he finished, his voice breaking through her panic. His hand gripped hers, firm but gentle. "I should send you away." "But I can't. You've already become—" He stopped, unable to finish. The silence pressed heavy between them. Tears stung Nia's eyes. "Malik, I don't know if I can survive this. I didn't ask for palaces and assassins and queens who hate me. I just wanted to heal people in my village." "And you will," Malik swore, his voice fierce. "I'll give you that clinic, every medicine, every tool. Just don't walk away." But before she could answer, a messenger raced into the garden, bowing breathlessly. "Your Highness, urgent news. The nurse's grandmother has fallen gravely ill." Nia's heart dropped. "Grandma Mabel?" The messenger nodded. "She collapsed tonight. The village doctor fears she may not last the week." Nia staggered, clutching her shawl. "I have to go to her." Now Malik's jaw tightened. "The roads aren't safe. Whoever came for me could strike again." "I don't care," she cried, her voice breaking. "She raised me. She's all I have left. If I don't go—" Her words choked off into a sob. Malik closed his eyes, torn. He knew the risk. Returning to the village would make them vulnerable, an easy target. His security had begged him to stay within palace walls until the threat was contained. But he couldn't watch the girl who had saved his life lose the woman who had given her hers. "I'll take you," he said finally, his voice like steel. "If you go, I go." The next morning, before dawn, the motorcade rolled back toward the countryside. Malik sat beside Nia in the back seat, his hand resting close to hers, but not touching. His eyes never left the road. Every shadow in the trees made his body tense. Every truck that passed sent his fingers twitching toward the weapon concealed in his jacket. Nia watched him through the corner of her eye. For the first time, she understood the cost of his crown. A life lived in suspicion, in constant danger, and yet, sitting there, part of her felt safer than she ever had before. By the time they reached the village, the sun was climbing over the pines, spilling gold across the dirt roads. Children chased the convoy, their laughter a stark contrast to the dread in Nia's chest. Grandma Mabel lay in her small bed, her breathing shallow, her skin pale as parchment. Her eyes flickered open when Nia knelt beside her. "Child," Mabel rasped, her voice thin, "you came back." "Of course I did," Nia whispered, clutching her hand. "I'll never leave you, Grandma." Never Malik lingered in the doorway, watching silently, his expression unreadable. For the first time, he seemed like an outsider, a prince standing at the threshold of a world too humble for his crown. But as he looked at Nia, bent over her grandmother with tears on her cheeks, he knew he would fight every assassin, every brother, every queen, if it meant keeping her in his world. And from the shadows outside, unseen eyes watched the motorcade, fingers brushing against triggers. The mercenaries had arrived. As Nia pressed her forehead to Grandma Mabel's hand, Malik's instincts prickled. Through the window, a flash of metal glinted in the trees. He stepped forward, jaw tightening. The assassins Jabari had hired were here, and this time, they hadn't come for him alone. The assassins never fired. The sight of Malik's armed guards spreading through the trees had forced them to retreat, for now. But the danger hung in the air, invisible and heavy, even as life in the village stirred with morning light. Inside the small house, Grandma Mabel lay propped on pillows, her breathing uneven. Nia stayed close to her bedside, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, whispering prayers. When Malik entered quietly, the old woman's eyes opened, sharp, despite her frailty. "So," she rasped, "you're the prince my granddaughter dragged out of the fire." Malik inclined his head with rare humility. "I owe her my life. And more than that, I owe her the world." Mabel studied him for a long moment, then coughed, her frail body shaking. "Fine words. But words won't protect her. Words won't keep this village alive. If you truly owe her, prove it." Malik bent low beside her, his usual arrogance stripped away. "Tell me how." That afternoon, trucks rolled into the dusty square. Villagers gathered astonished as workers unloaded crates of medicine, fresh linens, and modern equipment for the struggling clinic. A portable generator, refrigeration units, even boxes of textbooks for the small schoolhouse. Children squealed as cartons of new toys were passed around, their laughter rising like music. Mothers wept as nurses distributed medicine for their sick. And at the center of it all stood Malik, sleeves rolled up, carrying crates with his own hands. Sweat clung to his brow, but he worked with a focus that silenced even his critics. "Look at him," one woman whispered. "A prince, carrying boxes like a laborer." Another muttered, "Maybe he really does care for her." Even Chief Otis Jackson, who had watched with arms crossed from the shade of the church steps, was forced to admit the sight was something new. "Humph," he grunted, though the edge of his scowl softened. When the supplies were finally inside, Malik gathered the villagers in the square. His voice carried, firm but not commanding, more like a man pleading to be understood. "This village gave me shelter when I had none. It gave me life when I should have lost mine. And one woman among you gave me her courage, her strength, her heart. I am not here as your prince tonight. I am here as a man who owes everything to Nia Johnson." The crowd fell silent. Nia's breath caught, her pulse hammering as Malik turned to her, his gaze unwavering. He stepped forward, then sank to one knee in the dust of the square, uncaring of the golden cufflinks gleaming at his wrists. Gasps rippled through the villagers. Malik's voice softened, trembling with a rare vulnerability. "Nia Johnson, you saved me from death. You've shown me a love deeper than power, a truth richer than gold. Before your people, before your grandmother, I ask you, will you be my wife?" The world seemed to still. Nia's lips parted, her hands trembling. Tears blurred her vision as she looked at him, the arrogant prince, the man who had turned her life upside down, kneeling now in her village dirt as though nothing in the world mattered but her. "Nia," Malik whispered, his eyes shining, "say yes." A sob tore from her throat. She nodded, voice breaking. "Yes, yes, Malik, I'll marry you." Cheers erupted. Children clapped, women ululated with joy, and men pounded their fists against their chests. For the first time, the village's whispers were not of scorn, but of pride. Even Chief Otis stepped forward, his deep voice carrying over the noise. "Prince or not, if you keep this woman safe and honor her as you've promised, then you'll have this village behind you. Betray her." He paused, his eyes hard. "And you'll answer to us." Malik bowed his head solemnly. "I will never betray her." Behind the crowd, hidden in the shadows of an alley, Selina Dubois watched with venom in her eyes, her nails dug into her palms, her chest heaving with rage as she saw Nia lifted high by the villagers, embraced by the prince. "She thinks she's won," Selina hissed, her whisper sharp as a knife. "But queens are not chosen in dirt squares. They're made in courts of power, and power still belongs to me." She pulled out her phone, snapping photo after photo, her mind already racing with ways to twist the narrative. Across the city, in his private chambers, Prince Jabari poured himself another drink as news of the proposal reached him through a trembling aide. "So," Jabari muttered, swirling his glass, "he dares to tie himself to her in public." His smile spread slow and cruel. "Then it's time to remove both of them." Permanently, he scribbled a name on a slip of paper, sliding it across the table to a shadowy figure cloaked in black. "Make it bloody. Make it public. Let the kingdom see that the price of loving a peasant is death." The assassin nodded once, slipping into the darkness. Back in the square, Malik held Nia's hand aloft, his lips pressed to her knuckles as the crowd roared around them. For that one shining moment she felt untouchable, as though love could shield them from every shadow. But above them, storm clouds gathered, and unseen eyes tracked their every move. As the villagers celebrated late into the night, Malik whispered to Nia, "Nothing can tear us apart now." Yet in the tree line beyond the square, a rifle barrel glinted faintly in the moonlight, its sight fixed not on the prince, but on Nia herself. The drive back from the village was a blur of flashing headlights, sirens, and Malik's hand gripping Nia's tightly, as if afraid she might vanish if he let go. The proposal had changed everything, and nothing. They had declared their love in the village square, won over skeptical neighbors, and even drawn reluctant respect from Chief Otis. But the shadows stalking them hadn't disappeared. If anything, they had grown darker. By the time they reached the palace gates, night had fallen heavy, and storm clouds crackled above the domes of marble. Nia felt her stomach twist as guards escorted them inside. The villagers' cheers were still ringing in her ears, but here only cold silence lingered. Queen Mother Imani was waiting. Her crown glinted under the hall's chandeliers as she rose from her throne, her eyes flicking from Malik to Nia. "So it is true," she said, her voice sharp as steel. "You proposed to this girl in the dirt of her village?" Malik didn't flinch. "I did," and she said yes. Whispers rippled through the courtiers who lingered nearby, scandalized. Imani's lips pressed into a line. You shame this house with every reckless choice, Malik. You bind yourself to a peasant while your enemies circle like vultures. Then let them circle, Malik snapped, his voice echoing through the hall. I'd rather die with Nia by my side than live as a puppet to your traditions. The Queen Mother's nostrils flared, but before she could strike back, the sound of shattering glass cut through the air. A gunshot followed. Nia's scream tore from her throat as the window above them exploded into shards. Malik staggered as a bullet grazed his shoulder, blood blooming across his white shirt. Chaos erupted. Guards dove for cover, courtiers shrieked, and another shot rang out, splintering the marble column beside them. Down! Malik roared, pulling Nia against his chest, but she broke free, dragging him instead behind a toppled banquet table. Her hands pressed hard against his wound, blood slicking her fingers. You're not dying here, she hissed, her voice fierce despite her trembling. Not tonight. Not ever. His eyes burned into hers, pain and pride tangled. Just like the night of the crash, he whispered hoarsely. You saved me again. The guards returned fire, their bullets flashing through the broken windows. 2 assassins in black scrambled across the balcony, their rifles blazing. But the palace walls held more than soldiers. They held history, power, and loyalty, and now they rallied for their prince. Within minutes, the assassins were gunned down, their bodies falling lifeless into the courtyard below. Smoke hung heavy, the stench of gunpowder clinging to the air. Silence fell, broken only by Nia's ragged breaths as she pressed harder on Malik's wound. Queen Mother Imani descended the steps, her robes brushing the marble. For the first time, her face wasn't a mask of disdain, but something sharper, disbelief. You threw yourself over him, she murmured, staring at Nia. You shielded him with your own body. Nia didn't look up. Because I love him, and I won't let anyone take him from me. The words hung in the air, raw and undeniable. Even the Queen Mother had no reply. Later, as healers dressed Malik's wound in his chamber, Detective Marcus Cole stepped forward, evidence in hand. Your Highness, the assassins carried orders signed with Prince Jabari's seal. We traced the money to accounts he controls. There's no doubt. Your brother orchestrated both this attempt and the crash. Malik's face hardened, every muscle in his jaw taut. Then my brother is no longer family. He is my enemy. In another wing of the palace, Selina Dubois paced her chambers, fury twisting her beautiful features. She had aligned herself with Jabari, hoping his schemes would weaken Malik enough for her to reclaim her place. But now, whispers of Jabari's treachery spread like fire. If he fell, so too would anyone connected to him. The door creaked open. Jabari entered without knocking, his smile cold. You promised me power, Selina hissed, clutching her wine glass. You swore we'd bring him down together. Jabari chuckled, stepping closer. Power isn't shared, Selina. Did you really think I'd need you once Malik is gone? You're nothing but another pawn, and pawns are expendable. Fear flickered across her face, quickly masked by anger, but Jabari had already turned, his cape swirling as he left her trembling in the shadows. Back in Malik's chamber, the prince sat on the edge of his bed, his shirt torn, his shoulder bound in fresh linen. Nia stood by the window, her hands still stained with his blood. You should leave, Malik said softly, his voice hoarse. This place will destroy you. I can't promise your safety here. She turned, her eyes fierce. And leave you alone? After everything, I've already faced fire, bullets, your mother's scorn, and your brother's schemes. If I walk away now, then all of that was for nothing. He rose, crossing to her, his hand lifting to cradle her cheek. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. You're the only thing that makes me want to fight. He whispered. Not the throne. Not the crown. You, her breath caught, her heart aching at the raw truth in his voice. He leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers. I swear, Nia, no matter what comes, assassins, betrayal, even my own family, I will not lose you. Not even if it costs me the throne. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered back, Then we fight together. The promise sealed between them, fragile but fierce, like a flame in the storm. But outside the chamber, the storm was already gathering. News of Jabari's betrayal leaked to the council, dividing loyalties. Some demanded his arrest, others whispered of civil war. And in the shadows of the palace, Jabari sharpened his knives, his eyes burning with the fury of a man who had nothing left to lose. As Nia lay awake beside Malik that night, the echo of gunfire still in her ears, she whispered, We survived. But in the darkness of another wing, Jabari stood before a map of the kingdom, his finger tracing the palace walls. His voice was low, deadly. Next time, I won't miss. The palace walls smelled faintly of smoke. The air carried the metallic tang of blood, long after the assassins' bodies had been cleared from the courtyard. Though the marble floors were scrubbed and polished, though the chandeliers still gleamed overhead, shadows lingered in every corner. In his chamber, Prince Malik lay half-reclined against silken pillows, his shoulder wrapped tight in fresh linen. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with restless fire. At his side, Nia Johnson sat on the edge of the bed, pressing a damp cloth against his brow. Her fingers trembled. For the second time in as many months, she had felt his blood on her hands. For the second time, she had watched bullets tear the night apart, threatening to steal him from her. Her voice was barely a whisper. I can't do this again. Malik's gaze softened, though the tension in his jaw didn't ease. Nia? No. She shook her head, her braid swinging against her cheek. You tell me I saved you. You tell me I belong here. But every time I stand beside you, I see fire. I see death. What happens the next time they shoot? What happens when I can't stop the bleeding? He reached for her hand, his grip warm despite the chill in his skin. Then you'll stitch me again, like you always do. Because you're stronger than you think. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. Or I'll bury you. And I can't. Her voice cracked. She pressed the cloth harder against his skin to hide the trembling in her fingers. Malik didn't argue. Instead, he pulled her closer until her forehead rested against his. I would rather face death every day with you at my side than live safely without you. The words should have steadied her. Instead, they twisted inside her chest, equal parts comfort and curse. The following morning, the court gathered in the Hall of Ivory, its vaulted ceiling carved with angels of war. Nobles, ministers, and foreign dignitaries filled the benches, their murmurs low and poisonous. Nia walked beside Malik, every eye cutting into her like knives. Is that her? She clings to him like a vine. Ambitious little nurse. She smells the crown, the whispers buzzed until Selina's tinkling laughter rose above them. The socialite stood near the Queen Mother, her crimson gown daring, her voice honeyed. Oh, poor Malik. Even his wounds can't stop him from indulging a fantasy. Let's hope she remembers which spoon to use before she poisons the royal table. Laughter rippled across the hall. Nia's cheeks burned, humiliation pricking at her skin. But Malik stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes swept the room like a storm about to break. Enough! His voice boomed, silencing even Selina. He faced the nobles, his expression carved in fury. She saved me. Not one of you in this hall lifted a hand when assassins stormed my palace. She did. So mock her again, and you mock your prince. A stunned hush fell. The courtiers lowered their eyes, murmuring apologies. But high on her throne, Queen Mother Imani's gaze narrowed. Later, she summoned Malik privately. "You defy your council. You humiliate your court. And for what?" she demanded, her bracelets clinking as she gestured sharply. "For a girl who doesn't understand this world? Malik, she will drag you down." Malik's voice was calm but firm. "She lifts me higher than this throne ever has." Imani's jaw clenched. "If you won't think of yourself, think of the kingdom. Enemies watch. They smell weakness, and she is your weakness." When Malik didn't reply, she leaned closer, her voice like ice. "Send her away. If you love her, protect her by releasing her. Before your enemies destroy her." Malik turned his face away, but the seed of doubt had been planted. That night, Nia found herself wandering the palace corridors, unable to sleep. She stumbled upon Detective Marcus Cole in the war room, bent over maps and documents. "You shouldn't be here," Marcus said without looking up. "I can't sleep," she admitted softly. "Every shadow feels like a gun aimed at us." His eyes flicked to her, tired but kind. He gestured to the papers. "You're not wrong. Malik's brother has allies, wealthy ones, council members, businessmen, even guards. He doesn't act alone." Nia's throat tightened. "So it won't stop?" "Not until Malik either destroys Jabari or—" Marcus hesitated, "or gives up the throne." The thought twisted inside her. Malik had been born to rule. How could he choose between her and the crown? The next morning, Nia returned to Malik's chamber, determined to be honest with him. But when she entered, she froze. He wasn't alone. On his desk lay documents, maps, and sealed orders, all marked with her name. Her heart dropped as she scanned the pages. Travel permits, arrangements for guards, plans to send her back to the village for her safety. Malik rose, wincing at the pain in his shoulder. "I was trying to protect you. You don't understand the danger." "I understand more than you think." Tears spilled down her cheeks, hot with rage and grief. "I dragged you out of fire. I stitched your wounds with my own hands. I've stood in front of assassins with nothing but my body to shield you, and you still think I'm too weak to choose?" Malik's fists clenched. "Because if you stay, you will die. And I—" his voice cracked. I can't lose you." Her breath hitched. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with love twisted into chains. Then she shook her head, her braid brushing against her tear-streaked cheek. "Maybe loving you will kill me before your enemies do." She dropped the paper onto the desk and stormed out, her footsteps echoing through the marble halls. Malik didn't follow. He stood frozen, the words cutting deeper than any bullet. In the shadow of the doorway, Detective Marcus had watched the fight unfold. As Nia's footsteps faded, he turned to Malik. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "you may have just lost the only ally who would have died for you. And Jabari knows it." The storm outside the palace was not of thunder, but of whispers. It rolled through the city like a living thing, curling into taverns and tea-houses, boardrooms and markets. Everyone spoke of the prince who had chosen a nurse. Some voices rose with admiration, others with disdain. But everywhere the name Nia Johnson had become a weapon, and Prince Jabari Ober Williams wielded it best. He sat in a shadowed chamber with a circle of men in silk suits and polished shoes. Their rings glittered in the lamplight, but their eyes gleamed sharper than gold. Businessmen, ministers, old nobles clinging to traditions Malik threatened with his reforms. Jabari leaned forward, his glass of brandy catching the light. "My brother is reckless. He parades a village girl before the world, insulting our bloodline, insulting your investments. He speaks of clinics instead of contracts, of charity instead of profit. If this kingdom is to thrive, it cannot be under his hand." The oldest of the nobles, Lord Bako, tapped his cane against the floor. The council whispers already. They fear Malik's softness, but whispers are not enough. They will be, Jabari replied smoothly. When the time is right, we strike. Not only against Malik, but against the fragile peace he holds together. A kingdom divided will beg for a stronger hand. The men nodded slowly, their silence an oath. Back at the palace, Selina Dubois smoothed her crimson gown and reapplied her ruby lipstick. Her mirror-reflected beauty sharpened like a blade. She had been humiliated at the ball, cast aside in favor of a girl who didn't know which fork to use. But tonight, she intended to reclaim her throne. She entered Malik's chamber without knocking, gliding forward with a confident smile. "My prince," she purred, lowering herself into a chair without invitation. "I came to see how you've recovered." The wound, it must ache terribly. Malik, seated at his desk, barely looked up from the documents he was signing. "I don't recall summoning you, Selina." Her smile didn't falter, though her pride stung. "Must I wait for summons to care? We have history, you and I. The kingdom still whispers our names together." Malik finally raised his gaze, and the chill in it silenced even her. "History belongs in the past." "As do you," Selina stiffened. "You choose her? A nurse who knows nothing of power, of sacrifice?" Malik's voice cut like ice. "She knows more of sacrifice than you ever will. Leave, Selina, before I forget the respect your family is owed." Her cheeks flushed crimson, fury flaring in her eyes. But she rose with a graceful swirl of skirts, masking humiliation with poise. "This isn't over," she whispered, and she meant it. For Nia, life within palace walls was suffocating. She longed for fresh air, for the simplicity of her village. So one afternoon, she slipped out with Kayla at her side, hoping to shop quietly in the city market. But the world no longer allowed her to be anonymous. The moment she stepped onto the cobblestone streets, flashes exploded. Reporters swarmed like vultures, microphones thrust forward, questions shouted over one another. "Nia Johnson, is it true you seduced the prince while he was weak? Do you plan to use royal funds for your clinic? Are you after love, or the crown?" Her face burned, her pulse racing. Kayla tried to shield her, but the cameras pushed closer, the voices sharper. "She's nothing but ambition in a dress," someone sneered. "She wants to be queen." Nia's throat tightened. She stumbled back, her eyes stinging with tears. Then a voice thundered above the chaos. "Enough!" The crowd froze as Malik himself strode into the square, flanked by guards. His shoulder was still bound, but his presence was unshaken, his fury radiating. He pushed through the reporters until he reached Nia, pulling her firmly to his side. "You want your headline?" Malik roared. "Here it is. This woman is my future wife, the one who saved me when all of you whispered I was already dead. Insult her again, and you insult your prince." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras clicked furiously. Nia's heart pounded as he raised her hand to his lips in front of the world, sealing the declaration with undeniable certainty. For a moment, the reporters were silent, too stunned to speak. Then the questions came louder, faster, but Malik ignored them all, guiding Nia back into the waiting car. Inside, her hands trembled. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," Malik said, his jaw tight. "I did." Let them choke on the truth. That evening, a summons came. Queen Mother Imani requested Nia's presence, alone. Nia entered the Queen's private salon, with dread curling in her stomach. The air smelled of jasmine and old books, the walls lined with ancestral portraits. Imani sat by the window, her robes rich gold, her face unreadable. "Sit," she commanded. Nia obeyed, folding her hands in her lap. The Queen Mother's eyes studied her, sharp as a hawk. "You love my son." "Yes," Nia whispered, And he loves you." The admission startled Nia, but Imani's expression didn't soften. "Then hear me," the Queen Mother said. "If you truly love him, leave him. Before this kingdom burns, your presence divides the council, weakens his position, stirs enemies into action. Malik's throne is slipping, and it will be you they blame when it falls." Nia's breath caught. "You want me to abandon him?" "I want you to save him. Walk away, and he will be forced back into duty. Stay, and you will drag him to ruin." Tears pricked Nia's eyes, but she blinked them back. "I can't leave him. Not after everything." Imani's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then you are a fool." "And fools do not last in palaces." Her dismissal was final. Later that night, unable to sleep, Nia wandered the palace gardens. Her thoughts churned with the Queen Mother's words, with the humiliation of reporters, with Malik's fierce public defense. Then she heard voices, hushed, urgent, drifting from the colonnade. She froze, pressing herself into the shadows. It was Jabari. "The council is ready," he was saying, his tone smooth. "When Malik's engagement is announced, they will split. Half already pledge loyalty to me. All we need is one spark, civil unrest in the city. A bombing, perhaps, something the people will blame on Malik's softness." Nia's blood ran cold. Another voice, Lord Bako's, replied, "And the girl. What if she survives? The people adore her now. She may become a symbol." Jabari's laugh was low, cruel. "Then she dies first, and with her death, Malik loses not only his heart but his crown." Nia clapped a hand over her mouth to stop the cry that rose in her throat. Her heart pounded as the men moved on, their footsteps fading. She remained in the shadows, her entire body trembling. For the first time, she understood fully. This wasn't just about Malik's love. This was about the kingdom itself, and she was now a target marked for destruction. As Nia stumbled back toward the safety of her chamber, one thought hammered in her skull. If Jabari succeeds, Malik will lose everything: his crown, his kingdom, his life, and I may have to sacrifice my love to save him. The palace always carried whispers. Tonight, they became screams. It began with the sudden absence of footsteps outside Nia's chamber, then the shouts of guards echoing down marble halls, then Malik bursting into her room, eyes wide, blood draining from his face when he saw the empty bed. The sheets were still warm. The window hung open, curtains fluttering in the night wind. "Where is she?" Malik roared, his voice carrying through the corridors like thunder. He shoved past guards, fists clenched, ignoring the pain in his shoulder wound. "Where is she?" Detective Marcus appeared, panting, a slip of parchment clutched in his hand. "Your Highness, we found this tied to the balcony rail." Malik snatched it. The words were scrawled in bold strokes. "Come to the abandoned docks at dawn. Alone. Lay down your claim to the throne, and she lives. Refuse, and she dies first." Malik's chest heaved. His knuckles turned white as he crumpled the note. "It's him," Marcus said grimly. "Your brother." Malik's eyes burned like fire. "Then I'll end this with my own hands." Meanwhile, Nia awoke in darkness. Her head throbbed, her wrists raw where the ropes dug into them. She lay on the cold floor of what smelled like an abandoned warehouse. Sea salt, rusted iron, and damp wood filled the air. She shifted, wincing as pain shot through her shoulders. A figure stepped from the shadows, torchlight glinting on his smirk. Prince Jabari. "Well, well," he drawled, crouching before her. "The little nurse who thinks she can be a queen." Nia lifted her chin despite the ropes biting into her skin. "You'll never win. Malik will stop you." Jabari chuckled, his teeth flashing. "He'll try. That's the beauty of it. He'll come running, unarmed, desperate, ready to give me the throne himself. just to see you breathe another day. And if he doesn't? Nia spat. Jabari's eyes glittered. Then you die, and he crumbles. Either way, I win. Nia's stomach twisted, but she refused to lower her gaze. I'd rather die standing than see you sit on that throne. His hand shot out, gripping her jaw, forcing her to look at him. His voice was a hiss. Careful, girl. Courage is admirable, but courage won't save you when the blade touches your throat. He shoved her back, rising to leave. Nia coughed, tasting blood on her lip, but her eyes blazed. If this was her end, she would meet it with dignity. At the palace, chaos reigned. Guards scrambled, carriages prepared, messengers dispatched, but Malik would hear none of it. No armies, he snapped at Marcus. If Jabari sees soldiers, he'll kill her. This is between him and me. Marcus grabbed his arm. Your Highness, think. This is a trap. He wants you unarmed, exposed. If you go... I'd rather die than let her face him alone. Malik barked. His chest heaved, his hands shaking with rage. You don't understand. She is... He stopped, his voice cracking. She is everything. Marcus's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. Then let me at least shadow you. If things turn bloody, you'll need backup. Malik didn't argue further. He turned, storming down the hall. His mother appeared at the end, her robes sweeping. Malik! Queen Mother Imani cried. Where are you going? To save the only person who's ever mattered, he growled. Her eyes widened, fear cracking her mask of steel. You'll throw away your life and crown for her? Malik stopped only long enough to meet her gaze. I'd throw away 1,000 crowns for her. And then he was gone. Back in the village, news had spread fast. Nia kidnapped, Malik gone to face his brother. Fear rippled through the streets. It was Grandma Mabel, frail though she was, who stood before the crowd outside the church. Her cane shook in her hand, but her voice rose strong. Are we to stand idle while they steal our daughter? She demanded. This village gave her to the world, and now the world tries to break her. We will not allow it. The villagers roared their agreement. Mothers clasped their children, men raised fists, and for the first time, the humble people of Nia's home marched toward the city gates, demanding answers from palace guards. Their cries echoed into the night. Bring her back! Justice for Nia! Protect our nurse! Even the palace could not ignore their voices. Dawn broke grey and heavy. The abandoned docks stretched silent against the churning sea, gulls crying overhead. Malik walked across the rotting planks, unarmed, his cloak billowing in the cold wind. From the shadows, mercenaries emerged, rifles gleaming, and at the center of them, tied to a post, bruised but unbroken, was Nia. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Malik, no! He stopped 10 paces from Jabari, his hands raised. His voice carried steady, though his heart thundered. Let her go. I'm here. Jabari stepped forward, grinning like a wolf. So the mighty prince kneels. Do it, Malik. Speak the words. Renounce your claim to the throne, and she walks free. Malik's jaw clenched. His gaze flicked to Nia, bound and trembling. For her, he would do anything, even this. His voice caught, then louder. I renounce my claim to the throne. You'll have your kingdom, Jabari. Just let her live. Gasps rippled from the mercenaries. Even Marcus, hidden among the crates with loyal guards, stiffened. Jabari laughed, throwing his head back. So easy, so pitiful. You give away everything for a girl who doesn't belong at your side. Tears stung Nia's eyes. Her heart screamed at his sacrifice. She shook her head violently, her voice breaking as she cried out, No! Don't do it, Malik! Don't you dare surrender your crown for me! Her scream cut through the morning like a blade. Malik froze, his breath ragged. Jabari sneered. Silence her! A mercenary pressed a blade to Nia's throat, but her eyes never left Malik's. They blazed with fury, with love. "Fight!" she screamed. "Don't give him what he wants. I'd rather die than see you crawl." Malik's chest heaved, his fists trembling at his sides. In that moment, the choice lay bare: sacrifice himself or rise and risk it all. As the gull screamed and the sea crashed against the docks, Malik's hand inched toward the hidden dagger at his belt. His eyes locked on Jabari's, no longer broken, but burning. And Nia, blood on her lips, whispered hoarsely, "Don't save me. Save the kingdom." The dawn wind howled across the abandoned docks, whipping the sea into froth and rattling the rusted cranes that loomed like skeletal giants. Malik stood unarmed before his brother, shoulders squared, cloak snapping in the gale. The taste of salt and smoke filled the air, mingling with the metallic tang of danger. Behind Jabari, mercenaries lined the pier, rifles gleaming in the weak sunlight. At the center of it all, tied to a rotting post, bruised but unbroken, was Nia. Her eyes blazed even through exhaustion, her lips split, her wrists rubbed raw from ropes. And when Malik renounced his claim to the throne, her scream had cut through the wind. "Don't you dare surrender your crown for me." The words hung heavy. Jabari tilted his head, amused. "Listen to your nurse. She has more spine than you." He took a step closer, his sword drawn, its polished edge reflecting the weak light. "But no matter. You've already spoken. Your crown is mine." Malik's jaw tightened, his eyes flicked to Nia, her chest heaving, her gaze pleading. Not pleading for herself, but for him. And in that moment, Malik understood. She did not love him for his crown. She loved him for his strength, his fire, the part of him that refused to kneel. His hand twitched toward the dagger hidden in his belt. "Take him!" Jabari barked. Mercenaries surged forward, boots pounding against the planks. Malik spun, the dagger flashing into his hand. The first man lunged. Malik's blade sank deep into his arm, sending the weapon clattering into the sea. Another came from the side, rifle raised, but Malik twisted, driving his fist into the man's jaw with bone-cracking force. Chaos erupted. Gunfire thundered, bullets shattering wood, splinters flying. Nia ducked instinctively, her ropes scraping bloody lines into her skin. Her heart pounded as Malik fought bare-handed against armored men, his movements sharp and desperate. From the shadows of stacked crates, a shot rang out, but it wasn't aimed at Malik. It felled a mercenary instead. Detective Marcus stepped into view, pistol steady, his voice booming. "Palace Guard!" Now, dozens of loyal guards poured onto the docks, rifles blazing. The mercenaries reeled, caught off guard. "Kill them all!" Jabari roared, his face contorted. He grabbed Nia by the hair, yanking her head back, his blade pressing against her throat. "Stop, Malik! Or she dies here and now." Malik froze, chest heaving, his dagger dripping blood. "Let her go!" he roared. "Renounce again!" Jabari hissed. "Say it before all of them. Strip yourself bare before your guards, or I open her throat." Nia coughed, pain searing her neck, but her voice was steady. "Don't you dare, Malik! Don't you give him your crown!" Jabari snarled. "Silence, girl!" But her eyes never wavered from Malik's. "If you kneel now, you'll never rise again. Let me die if I must, but don't you crawl for me." Malik's chest burned with fury, pride, and terror, all tangled into one. He had never loved her more. "Then we rise together," he whispered, and in one swift motion, he hurled his dagger. The blade flew true, slicing across Jabari's arm. He howled, dropping the sword. In the same heartbeat, Malik charged, slamming into his brother, sending them both crashing against the dock. Nia collapsed forward, coughing as the ropes strained, but Marcus was already at her side, cutting her free. Stay down, he ordered, but Nia shoved herself upright, blood on her wrists, fire in her eyes. Not without him. The brothers grappled, fists pounding, boots scraping across the slick wood. You always thought you were better, Jabari spat, driving his elbow into Malik's jaw. Mother's golden boy, the crown's chosen heir. Malik struck back, his fist crunching against Jabari's nose. Better than a coward who hires knives in the dark. They rolled dangerously close to the edge of the dock, the sea raging beneath. Mercenaries and guards clashed around them, steel and gunfire ringing like thunder. Jabari grabbed a splintered plank, swinging it wildly. Malik ducked, the wood grazing his temple, then countered with a brutal kick to Jabari's chest. His brother staggered back, nearly tumbling into the waves. But Jabari recovered, eyes wild, pulling a pistol from his belt. He leveled it at Malik's heart. Say goodbye, brother. The shot rang. Malik jerked, but it wasn't his blood. Nia stood between them, chest heaving, her hand clenched around Jabari's wrist, forcing the gun aside. The bullet buried itself harmlessly in the dock. Not today, she spat. Fury blinded Jabari. He raised the gun again, but Marcus's shot cracked from across the pier, slamming into Jabari's shoulder. He staggered back, roaring with pain. Arrest him! Marcus shouted. Guards swarmed, but Jabari fought like a cornered wolf, slashing, striking, forcing his way through. Blood dripped from his arm, his eyes blazing with hatred. This isn't over, he bellowed, vanishing into the chaos, his loyalists covering his retreat. Silence fell, broken only by the groans of wounded men and the hiss of the sea. The mercenaries who remained dropped their weapons, surrendering. Malik staggered to Nia, his chest heaving, his shirt torn and bloodied. His hands cupped her face, trembling. Are you hurt? Her lips trembled into a weak smile. Only if you count rope burns and a bruised pride. He let out a ragged laugh, pulling her into his chest. For the first time, the weight of the world lifted, if only slightly. Marcus approached, his pistol still smoking. We have him wounded, but not captured. Jabari still has allies in the council. He won't give up quietly. Malik nodded grimly, holding Nia tighter. Then let him come. He'll find us ready. But they weren't alone. On the far side of the dock, hidden behind a toppled crate, Selena Dubois trembled. Her phone was still in her hand, camera app open, recording everything. She had aligned herself with Jabari once, but now she saw the tide turning. Proof, she whispered, her painted lips curling. Proof to bury him, proof to save myself. She sent the video to every journalist she knew, her heart pounding with vindictive glee. But even as she hit send, she didn't see the shadow step behind her. One of Jabari's retreating men caught her arm, wrenching it painfully. You chose the wrong side, lady, he growled, dragging her into the fog. Her scream was lost in the wind. Back at the palace, Queen Mother Imani stood on the balcony, watching the horizon where smoke still rose from the docks. Her advisors clamored around her. The people will demand answers. The council will fracture. The kingdom teeters on the edge of war. But Imani heard only the echo of Nia's voice in the great hall, days earlier. Because I love him, and I won't let anyone take him from me. For the first time, doubt flickered in the queen's heart. Doubt not in Nia's strength, but in her own certainty. Hours later, Malik sat with Nia in his chamber. The healers had stitched his cuts, cleaned her wounds, but neither could wash away the weight of what had happened. You stood between me and death, Malik said softly, brushing a hand against her bandaged wrist. You could have died, and you would have given up everything, she whispered. We're both fools. His lips curved faintly. Then we're fools together. But even as they leaned into each other, their moment fragile and tender, Marcus entered, face grave. "Your Highness," he said, bowing, "the council meets tomorrow." Jabari still breathes, and his allies grow louder. "You must decide. Do you crown yourself in defiance, or risk losing the throne altogether?" Malik's eyes burned. He turned to Nia, his voice steady. "Then tomorrow, before all of them, I will make my choice. And I will make it with you at my side." Nia's breath caught. She saw the fire in his gaze, the determination unshaken despite wounds, betrayal, and blood. She squeezed his hand, whispering, "Then let them see us. Let them see what love cannot break." As dawn broke once more, the palace bells tolled, summoning nobles and ministers to council. Outside the gates, villagers gathered with banners and cries for justice. Inside, Malik prepared to face his brother, his mother, and the kingdom itself. Beside him, Nia walked into history, unaware that one final betrayal still waited in the shadows. The palace bells rang through the capital, their iron voices tolling louder than sermons, louder than protests. From the hills to the harbors, the kingdom braced for reckoning. Inside the hall of ivory, the council gathered beneath vaulted ceilings, gold chandeliers trembling with the murmurs of nobles and ministers. On one side of the chamber sat Malik, flanked by Detective Marcus and a handful of loyal guards. On the other side, bound in chains but smirking defiantly, sat Jabari. The air reeked of incense and tension. "Prince Malik," Lord Bako intoned from the dais, "you stand accused of destabilizing this kingdom with your reckless choices, most notably your attachment to a commoner. Your brother claims you renounced your right to the throne. Is this true?" Gasps rippled through the hall. Malik rose slowly, his cloak sweeping. "I renounced nothing. I said words under duress, with a blade at the throat of the woman I love." "Do not mistake sacrifice for surrender," the crowd murmured. Jabari barked a laugh. "You see? He admits it. He is weak, driven by lust, ready to cast aside crown and country for a nurse from the mud." At that, the chamber doors burst open. Villagers flooded in, led by Grandma Mabel herself, her cane striking the marble like a drumbeat. Behind them marched merchants, city folk, even palace staff. The gallery shook with their cries. "Nia saved our prince! Justice for the nurse! Crown Malik! Crown Malik!" The councillors stiffened. Queen Mother Imani's eyes narrowed, though even she seemed shaken by the roar of the people. Malik turned to the assembly, his voice rising above the din. "You call her a nurse, as though it were an insult. But when assassin struck, it was she who shielded me. When betrayal festered, it was she who stood unbroken. When I faltered, it was she who told me to rise." He reached for Nia, pulling her forward. She trembled but did not bow her head. "This is Nia Johnson, my strength, my crown. If you want a prince who bows to murderers, then give Jabari your loyalty. But if you want a king who fights for his people, who bleeds beside them, then stand with me and with her." Silence, heavy and breathless, filled the hall. Then, slowly, one minister stood. "Long live Malik." Another rose. "Long live Malik." Soon the chamber thundered with voices. "Long live Malik!" Jabari surged to his feet, chains rattling. "Traitors! All of you! He'll lead you to ruin!" Marcus stepped forward, voice sharp. "No, Jabari! You led yourself to ruin." He tossed a folder onto the council table. Inside, bank records, contracts, witness statements, proof of Jabari's mercenary ties, his assassination attempts, his conspiracy. Selena's trembling voice cut through the uproar. She stood at the back, hair disheveled, her gown torn from the docks. "It's true. I saw it all. He ordered her death. He boasted of seizing the crown through blood gasps." Heads turned. Jabari snarled at her. "You wretched snake! You betray me to save yourself. Selina flinched but lifted her chin. Better a snake than a corpse. The council moved swiftly. By unanimous vote, Jabari was stripped of his title, exiled from the kingdom, his fortune seized. Guards dragged him from the chamber as he howled, "This isn't over! You'll regret crowning him! You'll all regret—" His curses faded into the distance. Selina tried to slip away, but Queen Mother Imani's voice stopped her. "Selina Dubois, you disgraced this court, consorted with a traitor, and mocked the people's trust. You will never set foot in this palace again." Selina's painted smile cracked. She fled the hall, jeered by villagers. When the chamber settled, all eyes turned to the Queen Mother. She rose slowly, her robes sweeping the marble, her face unreadable. She stood before Nia, her gaze piercing. "You," she said coldly, "you defied me. You challenged centuries of tradition. You placed yourself between my son and death." Nia bowed her head, bracing for rejection. But Imani's next words stunned the hall. "And because of that, I cannot deny your place at his side." Not as nurse, not as villager. As future queen, Nia's breath caught. Malik's hand tightened around hers. The Queen Mother turned to the council. "Crown him." That evening, beneath the blaze of chandeliers and the solemn hymn of choirs, Malik knelt before the archbishop as the crown was placed upon his head. The hall thundered, "Long live King Malik!" But when he rose, he did not look at the crown. He looked at Nia. He descended the steps, the golden diadem gleaming, and before the entire kingdom, he knelt before her. Gasps erupted, but Malik's voice was clear, steady, fierce. "I have a crown of gold, but it is nothing compared to the crown of your love. Nia Johnson, will you marry me? Not as nurse, not as peasant, not as subject, but as the queen of my heart, forever?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her voice trembled, but her answer was strong. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The hall erupted, villagers and nobles alike cheering, weeping, clapping. Malik rose, pulling her into his arms, sealing their vow with a kiss that silenced centuries of tradition. Months later, the palace gardens bloomed with spring. But Malik was not in gilded halls. He walked through the village, dressed simply, his crown left behind. By his side, Nia carried a basket of medicines. Ahead stood the new clinic, its walls freshly painted, its sign proudly declaring, "Johnson Community Health Center." Children ran past, laughter ringing. Mothers smiled. Elders bowed their heads. The clinic doors opened, revealing rows of beds, shelves of medicine, rooms where hope lived. Inside, Grandma Mabel sat in a rocking chair, watching her granddaughter move through the hall with a stethoscope around her neck and love in her eyes. "You've built more than a clinic," Mabel whispered when Malik approached. "You've built a future." Malik took Nia's hand, lifting it to his lips. "She built it. I only gave her what she deserved all along." Kastyat Nia turned, her gaze soft but unyielding. "You gave me more than walls and medicine, Malik. You gave me the courage to believe I could be both healer and queen." He smiled, his forehead pressing gently against hers. "And you gave me more than a throne. You gave me a reason to wear it outside." The villagers gathered, singing, clapping, celebrating the union of king and nurse. And as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold, Nia whispered the truth that had carried them through fire, blood, and betrayal. "Love is the greatest crown of all." Malik's arm wrapped around her, steady and unbreakable. Together, they stepped into the clinic, into the future, into a kingdom reborn not by tradition or power, but by love. Here comes the end of the story. If I was able to make your day, comment Mr. Hope you made my day.